This is a section of Boone Trace in Levi Jackson Park in London. Levi Jackson Park is the only place where you can find both sections of the Wilderness Road and Boone Trace on the same piece of property. Now, a lot of people confuse the two. It's important to remember Boone Trace was opened in 1775. The Wilderness Road didn't open until after statehood in 1792, and the Wilderness Road opened in 1795. But this trace was cut by Daniel Boone and 30 axemen. It was not designed for wagons. It was designed for single file traffic of people and pack mules. And an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 people sought the promised land on the western frontier on Boone Trace. I'm recording this on October the 3rd. On October the 3rd, 1786, James McNitt led a company through here, a company that consisted of the Barnes family and the Ford family, making their way to the western frontier and a promise of a new tomorrow. And they came right through here on October of 1786. That night, the McNitt Company stopped to camp on the banks of the Little Laurel. Today is October the 3rd. And I thought I would do a short video on the anniversary of the worst Indian massacre in Kentucky history, here at the site of the defeated camp located at Levi Jackson Park. 235 years ago today, the McNitt party, led by James McNitt, also consisted of family members of the Barnes family and the Ford family, had left the sanctity of their home in Virginia and were seeking the promise of a new life on the western frontier. Back then, this was part of Kentucky County, Virginia, so they were headed west to claim new lands and start new lives. On that fateful night, they decided to camp on the banks of the Little Laurel River, just over here near what we now know as McHarg's Mill. They had the worst of the trip behind them. They were headed toward Crab Orchard. Their plan was to leave here, travel on to Boone Trace. Actually, the path follows over near Highway 472. It basically cuts through the backyard of Johnson Elementary School, down the gap toward Twin Branch, across Feltner Steer Road. They were going to make their way from the Feltner Steer Road area back toward Hazel Patch, below Hazel Green School, where the road forked. Boone Trace and Skaggs Trace intersected right there at the foot of Landrum Hill, and they were on their way to Crab Orchard. They had a couple of more days behind them, and that night they decided to rest and take it easy. They would never make that trip, because that night, on October the 3rd, 1786, they were attacked, and about 24 people lost their lives. One survivor, allegedly, I have also heard 2 survivors, was a lady and a man. The lady went up the hill in that direction during the attack and found a hollow tree. They hid in a hollow tree where she gave birth to a baby that night. Eventually, they would make their way on to Crab Orchard and Logan's Fort around Stanford and inform them of the tragedy. They sent a party of people here who gathered the remains of the men, women, and children and buried them in mass graves here. There are 24 people buried here at the defeated camp, and it all happened 235 years ago today. As the sign says, the victims were buried here at the site of their last camp. Rest in peace, McNitt, Barnes, and Ford families. One of many tragedies that occurred back during the westward expansion of the American frontier.